Some lessons don't come from books. They come from bruises. They come from life.
There is no substitute for experience, period.
Some of the biggest successes were a byproduct of failure.
If you want to learn, build, and grow,
Why not learn from somebody who's already paid the price for success?
the wisdom is in the gray.
This is the Greybeard Show.
Greybeard Show. Learn,
Build.
grow.
And welcome to the show. My name is Greybeard, otherwise known as Sean Davis. I'm a coach, I'm a mentor, I'm an entrepreneur, and this is the Greybeard Show. I talk about leveling up, give instruction on how to be a better version of yourself. I work with individuals, I work with businesses. I'm a serial entrepreneur myself, started many different businesses and scaled 3 of them into 7-figure revenue. And so today I'm going to be talking about what we like to call in the business of coaching and mentoring strategic life blockers. These are the things that hold you back and prevent you from leveling up, prevent you from living your highest and best self. So we'll talk about blockers. There's about 7 different blockers that we encounter all the time in my practice that limit entrepreneurs, limit folks that are trying to be better versions of themselves. So we'll go down through that. But more importantly, I'll talk about the answers, the solutions, the things you can do to accelerate growth, to accelerate change in your life. And we call these accelerators. And so let's just jump in, if you will. So first thing that I want to talk about is, in life, if you've ever been in a scenario or a series of scenarios throughout your life, depends on how long you've been around and how much life you've lived and how much introspection work, how much reflection work that you've done. But if you've ever noticed that there are patterns in your life and you just kind of seem to be in this never-ending hamster wheel, you feel like you're trying to make change, you feel like you're moving, you're doing action, but it's really not getting you where you want to be. You're not leveling up. You're not taking the next step, and it just feels like you're kind of spinning endlessly. Well, more than likely, you've got a blocker in your life that needs to be addressed that will help you to shake off the Groundhog's Day feel that you got where you're not really moving anywhere. So the first thing, and the most significant one, I've done a tremendous amount of work on this myself, but it really is fear. I've seen fear really hold people back more so than anything else. Fear of the unknown. What if it fails? Fear of the uncertain, fear of discomfort, fear of being an imposter, fear of lack of knowledge in a particular industry. And fear is rampant. And it's the one thing that really is significantly self-imposed. And most of us that feel this fear whenever we want to make a change in our life or fearful of something happening to us, that emotion, it triggers complacency, it triggers security, it triggers, you just wanting to stay where you are because the known is better than the unknown, right? So personally in my life, throughout my life, I've had occasions to have great success, and I've had occasions to fall flat on my face with scrapes and bruises, literally and figuratively and financially. And I think when you weather enough battles in your life, you realize that, number one, there isn't really a lot of things to truly be fearful of in life, specifically relative to business and taking risks and things like that. I think that one of the best things that you can do if you are fearful, so let's say you really want to change careers. Let's say you want to be an entrepreneur and you're not now. Or let's say you want to move out of the area because you're sick and tired of where you live. Maybe you're sick and tired of California, but you're fearful of the unknown. Where do you go? What's it going to look like? Whatever the example is, whatever the thing is that causes you to withdraw associated with fear, here's what you need to do. You need to write down the worst case scenario that would happen. Whatever your worst fears realized would be. What does that mean? Does it mean you went bankrupt? Does it mean that you faced a series of really uncomfortable situations? Does it mean that you lose your house? Does it mean that, whatever the scenario is, whatever the worst case is for you, when you write it down, if I do this, my fear is XYZ, whatever it's going to be. Oftentimes, you'll realize it's rarely as bad as your mind makes it. Okay, let me give you an example. If you're successful enough in business, at some point you're going to face some form of litigation. I just believe that. We're in a very litigious state. We're in a very litigious country. A lot of people don't want to take personal accountability for their actions. So, for example, where it hit me was in financial services. I was a financial advisor, and I can't count how many times folks had selective memory, never issued the word guaranteed, never issued any of that stuff, went above and beyond, out of my way to make full disclosures on any investment that I had ever authored or sold to somebody, right? But occasionally, people will have selective memories. An investment goes south, and an investor is looking for a scapegoat, and the person that they want to point the finger at is whoever introduced them to the idea or the investment. So that happened in financial services. We went through arbitration. And so initially, when you think about, oh my gosh, this is court action, this is formal, this is whether it's a civil suit or arbitration or whatever, it can be paralyzing. Your mind just goes crazy. It's your worst fears realized. Right? How am I going to handle this? What is it going to mean? How's it going to upset me? And so here's the thing. For me, the very first time that happened, I responded like many people do. I responded in fear. I was uncertain about the unknown. I didn't understand where this was all going to go. I didn't understand what kind of jeopardy it meant for me personally, but effectively, I needed to try to get ahead of it. And so now fast forward to where I am now, 54 years old, run several businesses, been through a lot in financial services, had more than just one occasion to experience quote unquote litigation in financial services. And here's where I'm at now. Number one, nothing happens fast. Number two, it's often way less troublesome or problematic than what your mind will make it seem or create. And, it's not something that should shatter your life in a moment, but fear will make it all of those things. Fear, false evidence appearing real, that will blow it up tenfold into a much bigger monster than it actually is. So write down your worst case scenario and how you'd recover from it. And then realize that the likelihood of that occurring is probably highly remote. And then on the opposite side of it, you got to ask, what if it works? What if it actually works? What if everything I've wanted? What if everything I dreamed about? What if everything I've had embedded inside me that's called me to take action? What if all of that works out? Is it worth the risk? So I think if you write it down, you'll realize. So that blocker number one is fear. Let's get into blocker number two, that holds people back significantly in their life, and that's guilt. For me, the prime example for me in business was I was so hard charging, so fervent to chase after success, that I sacrificed a lot of family time early on. I've got 4 boys. I'm married to my high school sweetheart, and so early on in my career, I was absent a lot. I missed raising my kids actively on a day-to-day basis. Now, I was there for soccer games. I was there for karate practice. I was there for football games. I was there. I don't want you to think that, I wasn't there, but, even physically when I was there, I wasn't necessarily there mentally. And so I do have guilt that, that was something that happened, and especially when your kids feed that back to you later on in life, you weren't there, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. You can feel like a bad parent. You can withdraw emotionally. Guilt is very caustic. The problem with it is guilt and shame, are sisters to each other. The problem with it is you can't change the past, okay? You can't go back and do it different. History is history. It's gone. It is what it is. And so, one of the things that I think is helpful is to, maybe write a letter of amends to yourself. even if you never give it to whoever. Maybe you wronged somebody at some point in the past and recognize now the mistake of whatever it is, whatever choice you made and how you wronged them. Write a letter of amends. Get it out of your body, get it physically on paper, write the letter, store it away, burn it, do whatever you want, send it to whoever you need to send it to. But the cathartic process of acknowledging that you're feeling that emotion of guilt, that process I think is important to go through. And then I think that there's something defining about the fact that you're going to take that guilt and that you're going to expunge it. You're going to put it on fire. It's going to evaporate. And even if you never send it, apologize to yourself, then schedule a meaningful connection with somebody, at some point in this week. Move forward in a positive direction. I realize as soon as I am feeling guilt, if I serve somebody, whether it's in church or whether it's in the community, think about, for example, the floods that recently happened in Texas. If you serve other folks, if you're coming along, giving, first responders, helping out families, whatever, looking for, precious items and stuff like that was carried away in the water, I imagine that it's very difficult for you to rest or stay in that feeling of guilt if you're serving other people. So, that's a big blocker, guilt. Do you have guilt that's unreconciled that you need to address or to speak of? And by the way, I have all of this information. I've got it in a special report that I'll make available to you. If you want to connect with me as you're listening here, if you want to connect with me, you can text Greybeard to 84503. I'll give you the special report. It's called Blockers and Accelerators, High Impact Change Now. If you address your blockers, if you focus on your accelerators, I promise you it's going to start to create change in your life. And so if you text Greybeard to 84503, I'll make sure that this is available to you so you can do your own exercise and do your own work on it. But let's talk about blocker number 3 that takes hold, and that's anger. For me, this has been a challenge personally in my own life, not because I walk around quote unquote as an angry person, but somebody else out there in the radio land might feel the same way. For me, frustration was the slippery slope into anger. Okay, the emotion, the feeling of frustration for me makes me mad. It would make me angry. Now, over time, I've realized that anger is brewing and bubbling inside of me. If your body is like a mountain, anger is like the volcano that's inside the mountain, right? It's about to explode and it's bubbling in there, and it's only a matter of time before it unleashes its fury. And for me, I think it was a combination of things, and maybe this is you. If you're an entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur is a very challenging process. You've got to be about 8 to 10 different things all in one wrapper, and all of the risks on you, all of the pressures on you. And so I think in business, because of my business life and some of the personal pressure I felt in business, I would walk around at like a 0 out of 10. I'd walk around at like maybe a 7 or 8 out of 10 on normal days. And all it would take would be an event of one of my family members or an event with one of my clients or personally or out in the community or whatever. And at 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10, but if I was already 8 at 10 and now I'm at 9 or 10 out of 10 because of this little thing, I'd pop off. I had difficulty, recognizing that it was there. And I think anger is something that a lot of men feel, and I think it's rooted in frustration. I don't think I'm alone. But if you're still mad at your ex-boss from 5 years ago and bring that bitterness into every new job experience or conversation that you have, it's working against you. That's an anchor in your life. That anger, that resentment, if you hold on to it, it's only corrosive to you. It's like rust on metal. It'll eventually, corrode you to the point where it has really devastating consequences in your life. And so, what I would recommend is potentially journaling, writing it down, journal, like if you feel that anger. The first thing that I would do is, number one, I don't ever send an email when I'm upset anymore. I don't ever have a phone conversation when I'm upset. I'll take some time to reflect. I'll take some time to think about it. And if it's a really kind of tumultuous or highly probable to create anger or frustration in me, I'll wait until the next day, sleep on it a bit, let some of that diffuse, right? But you can also write it out. Some people call it a rage letter, but let it all out. Write it down, then burn it. Practice saying, I choose peace over being right. I choose peace over continuing the fight. I choose peace over this feeling that I continue to have, especially if anger has been something in your life that's created some catastrophic events. Like I've seen people fly off the handle, all of a sudden, get in a fight, let's say in a bar. Next thing you know, they're being arrested, they're being arraigned, they got a civil lawsuit against them because they hurt somebody's neck or shoulder or back or something along those lines. If uncontrolled, anger can really ruin your life, which is why it's a major, major blocker to try to address. And it's something that we talk about actively in my practice when I work with individuals or business owners and stuff like that, because especially with entrepreneurs, it's something that I think is very common because the business world is fraught with opportunities to be frustrated or angry. So just be mindful of that. All right. Blocker number 4, and we'll spend a little bit of time on here because this is a great example. Sometimes self-sabotage can be disguised as other blockers, So for example, if you're a hothead and you've had trouble getting into fights in the past, let's say as an example, then you're probably not going to want to go out to a large group of people when it's a party atmosphere and knowing that you're probably going to get into some altercation. So that's an example of self-sabotage. You're consciously making a decision to put yourself in a position where something negative is highly probable, but you're making that conscious decision. Some people don't feel like they deserve success, or some people don't feel like they deserve to be healthy. You're finally getting healthy and then you eat a box full of donuts at 11 o'clock at night, or you land a big client and then procrastinate on the project, or you win a big sales bid and you make a lot of money and then you kick up your feet and coast for the next 3 months. These are all examples of conscious or unconscious self-sabotage, and it's risky. It's like this one's sneaky. I think the sneakiest version of self-sabotage is when an individual doesn't really recognize that they are sabotaging themselves, that when they haven't come to the realization yet that it's in them and they keep choosing these bad choices because it's scary to think that what if it does work out? Some people are so afraid of success. They're more afraid of success than they are failure because they don't necessarily understand how it's going to transform their life or how their life might change, or the fear of what that change might look like would be uncertain for them. And so, self-sabotage is a big one. I've talked with it about my kids. I've talked about, for example, I've got 4 boys and again, married to my high school sweetheart. We've been married for 31 years, but I talk with my boys about, the most important decision that they'll ever make in their life other than, their faith is going to be who they choose to marry. That decision can make your life or it can ruin your life, right? And so who you choose to get in relationship with is a big deal. And some people, the form of self-sabotage that exhibits in them is always choosing the wrong people. Consciously or unconsciously, they're choosing the wrong people. And, I can see a life of challenge if that were to occur to you. So here's what we recommend. If you need to ask yourself some questions, right? Ask yourself before every key decision that you make, does this align with my goals? Does this align with the person that I want to become? Is this who I am? Am I worthy of success? Am I worthy of good things happening to me? And you can use visual cues like sticky notes or screensavers or something like that, positive affirmations, but self-sabotage is a sneaky one. I think it's the one blocker that I'll discuss throughout the whole thing that is hidden in a lot of people. And that's why it's a challenge to root it out and to get to the bottom of it. In my practice, mentoring and coaching, I really ask a lot of questions about failures in people's lives and patterns of failures. Did you do the same things over and over again? Was there a pattern to these types of decisions that were not great decisions, and then sometimes we can find the root level of asking questions and kind of digging deeper into that self-sabotage. So just keep that in mind. It's a sneaky one. The next one, the next blocker that's most common in people's life is not so sneaky. I think most people in your friend circle or family circle would maybe recognize this if they're frequently in contact with you, but it's laziness. Okay, laziness is probably one of the more obvious blockers. Most people that are quote unquote lazy recognize that they're lazy. Okay, most people that have somebody in their life that exhibits laziness, they're going to see that. They've seen it more than once. It's something that's common amongst your friends and family. That would be an awareness that you'd have. And an example would be maybe you scroll TikTok for an hour instead of sending that resume or calling your grandma. You look for excuses to do nothing. And sometimes laziness can be rooted in fear. It's like you're stacking these blockers together. You're fearful because you don't think you deserve success, which is a form of self-sabotage. So then you become lazy and just do nothing, which is also a form of self-sabotage, right? So people that are aware of it, that consciously continue to be quote unquote lazy and lack ambition and things like that, I think that's rooted in self-sabotage. But if your nature, throughout being a young child, you're more sedentary or whatever, your nature is to just relax and enjoy yourself, it's difficult for you to level up if you're always going to stay connected to laziness, if you're always going to be in a situation where you'd prefer comfort over discomfort. Because understand that change is rooted in discomfort. In order for you to change, you got to do things differently. In order for you to become a different version of yourself, a better version of yourself, you've got to change how you live your daily life. And if you don't change, quote unquote, laziness, then that can be an issue. So here's a little exercise that you can use. Do the 2-minute rule. Okay, so if it takes less than 2 minutes to get done, do it now. Motivation follows action, not the other way around, right? So these are little wins. Laziness wins, we'll call them. When you do it now instead of procrastinating, when it takes less time to get it done now. And so laziness can permeate a lot of areas of your life if you allow it to. So just take action. Action is the antidote, obviously, for laziness. Getting up and doing something, right? And so try that, see if it helps you with that laziness concern that you've got. Let's talk about blocker number 6, all right? This one in our culture today is, I think, troubling to everyone, and it's more pervasive than it's ever been before. But I think the people that are the most affected by it are young people today, and that's envy. Envy is so significant in its permeation of our society today, primarily because of our smartphones, right? You can see every example on social media. I don't even really call it, I think they're changing the name of it. It's not social media anymore. It's like interest media, because it's really not people that you know anymore. It's become people that you don't know and what you're interested in. But there's so many examples of people that you can find in everyday life that we never used to be able to find ever, that are living a life that you want to live, and it can spawn jealousy or envy. Okay? You secretly resent your friend's success and avoid their wins, or secretly root against them. You're envious of other people that have more than what you have, or are doing more than what you're doing. That envy is very caustic. It's like a life change cancer. It's rooted deep down, and it's difficult to get over it. Because but here's the thing. Okay, from a spiritual perspective, and I'm a spiritual person, right? And what I mean by that is I'm a Christian, but I'm not a beat you over the head with the Bible type of Christian. What I mean by that is Jesus loved on people, sinners and the like, and none of us are perfect. And so for me, it's more about being Christ-like. And so when you think about envy, one of the things that you got to realize in your life is that you were created for a purpose. You You were born at this time, in this season, in this country, in this state. You live here now for a purpose. God had a plan, a design for you. And what is yours will always be yours. Nobody can take what is yours. Your destiny, your purpose, your fulfillment on this planet, coming alongside others, nobody can take that from you. It's not anybody else's to have. It's only yours. And I think the more you get rooted in this idea that you're not behind, it's not too late. Life has taken some twists and turns, but it's delivered you in a point right now where you're hearing my voice right now. And maybe this is resonating with somebody. Maybe it's hitting somebody hard, but like this envy thing, being jealous, being envious of other people, having this negative response to seeing other people thrive or live their best life, or, let's be real, letting other people show you the best moment of their day or the best. Because again, when you peel away what you see on your smartphone, you'll find that these are everyday people just like you and me. They have their challenges, they have their blockers, they have their accelerators, they have their life, right? So the reality of it is that you're just seeing the shiniest parts of it, right? So here's what I would encourage you to do if you suffer from envy. If you got a friend in your life that's had some success, text or call them, congratulate them, come alongside them. Gratitude kills envy. When you're grateful for what you have, you don't stay rooted in envy. When you're grateful for your eyesight, when you're grateful for your health, when you're grateful for the roof over your head, when you're grateful knowing that you're probably the top 1% of all of the population of the world, regardless of how successful and how much money you have in your bank account, because you live in the greatest country in all of the world. Celebrate someone else's success today out loud, and that can help you address that rooted feeling of envy. Envy is caustic. It's holding you back. It's a blocker. It's blocker to you living your best life, the best version of yourself. And gratitude kills envy. So stay rooted in gratitude. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into accelerators. But the more you can root yourself in gratitude journal, gratitude prayers, positive affirmations, rooted in gratitude, all of those things help. It immediately squashes those burgeoning feelings of envy. So the last one I want to talk about in terms of blockers that we deal with, and I'll kind of summarize all this if you just joined the show, is a lack of focus. Okay. Now, some people out there, here's an example. You start 5 different projects around your house and finish none of them. Okay. You have 42 browser tabs open on your computer, and life feels like all of them, right? Like, so you just lack of focus, like to stay focused. Maybe you got ADHD, maybe you got ADD, maybe you've got just a crazy life. It makes it difficult to focus. Maybe you get too many things coming at you, but that lack of clarity, that lack of focus is holding you back, because in order for you to go where you need to go, you need to be focused on how to get there, right? Build the plan, right? You don't want to start 5 projects and finish none. You want to start a project and finish it, because there's several things that happen. When you start something and finish it, you feel a sense of achievement. You feel a sense of success. You feel a sense of accomplishment, and that then grows a greater desire to continue to feel that sense. And so if you can start something small, and just finish it, root in that focus, turn a blind eye to everything else that's going on and just stay focused in the task. Set a timer. I call it 25-minute Pomodoro method, but and work on the task. No switching. Just do one thing, then break, and then repeat. Pick up the next thing. Where you're breaking your task into chunks of time, and you can use your phone, set it as a recorder, set it as a timer, do whatever you need to do. But when you can do that and you can start to focus on completing a task, that focusing is really the exercise, the muscle that you want to develop. You want to focus on what you're trying to accomplish and then complete that task. And so, kind of in summary here, I'm all about life change. My personal, view, back in my early 20s, I adopted this concept of Kaizen, which is a Japanese term, a Japanese word represented by 2 kanji symbols. and it means continuous ongoing improvement. Most of all, it for them means in manufacturing. It's kind of like the tagline for Lexus, the relentless pursuit of perfection. That's Kaizen. That's rooted in Kaizen, pursuing perfection, pursuing being better, pursuing eliminating, inefficiencies, right? So my personal philosophy on it, or my adoption of it, is the idea that I want to be the best possible version of myself in all the areas that matter most in life. I want to be the best father I can be. I want to be the best husband. I want to be the best business person. I want to be the best community leader. I want to be the best faith leader. And so I've always strived to be a better version of myself and attacking these blockers. So here in summary, here are the blockers again. These are the things that are holding you back in life from living a better version of life for yourself. Fear. Talked about fear, guilt, anger, self-sabotage, laziness, envy, and lack of focus. Those 7 blockers are holding you back. I can definitely help. If you want to connect, I've got a special seat, blockers and accelerators. Everything you need to know now. This is all about life change. It's about quick life change. If you're feeling stuck, okay, definitely reach out. You can text me at, just text Greybeard, Greybeard, to 84503. It's a short code number, 84503 on your smartphone. If you text Greybeard to 84503, I'll make sure you get this blockers and accelerators guide. It's a quick change guide to take action on, to start addressing, feeling stuck in your life. And I think you'll get a lot of value from it. So again, text Greybeard to 84503 if you'd like to connect with me and get that guide as a process. So let's talk a little bit about accelerators for a second. The most significant way to move in a positive direction in your life is to start focusing on these 7 different accelerators for your life, okay? Now, the first one I'm going to talk about is phenomenal for life change. It's gratitude, okay? This is the stuff that launches you forward. As I just talked about, gratitude is the kryptonite, okay, to envy, all right? It kills envy, right? So gratitude, exercise. Each morning, daily, list 3 things that you're grateful for, but get real specific. You don't want to just say coffee. I mean, I guess that's fine, but the smell of cinnamon in my morning coffee, that shifts your mindset even faster, okay? Another example would be, I'm grateful for the cool morning air when I walk with my dog this morning. I'm grateful for the smell of flowers. I'm grateful for the gentle breeze on my face. These are small things. The more trivial, the more benign, the better, because what you're doing is you're recognizing that you're not grateful for, the money in your bank account. You're not, grateful for, superficial things. You're grateful for the basics of life, the ability to walk, the ability to move your arms, the ability to see, the ability to hear. How many people in your life don't have those capabilities? Or how many people do you know or have heard of that don't have those capabilities, right? So, no matter what you're dealing with, no matter how significantly disadvantaged you are, you can still change your attitude and your mindset by rooting yourself in gratitude. It's the antidote to a bad day. It's the antidote to, have you ever had one of those days, I call it having a nothing's right day, where it just feels like nothing's right? If I'm feeling that way, literally you got to sit down, take out a pen and just write the things that you're grateful for. All right. I promise you it'll help. The more you live in gratitude, the faster you'll launch life change for yourself. Next one is love. Okay. So accelerator number 2, love. When you love on folks, when you show love, okay, love is a feeling, but it's also an action. Love on your community, love on your family, love on your church, love on your coworkers, love on your employees, love on your clients. What that means is showing them outwardly that you care, that you're thinking of them, that they matter, right? So here's an exercise: leave a sticky note for your spouse. A lovely sticky note, just something sweet, something nice. Call a friend you haven't talked to in forever and just tell them that you're thinking about them and that you hope that they're okay, and ask them about their life and let them know that you're always there, right? Or do a random act of kindness, paying for someone else's coffee, compliment a stranger. Love grows through action. You're not waiting for a special Hallmark moment. You're just taking action. You're developing love. You're embodying love because of care and kindness. I promise you, the more you sit and root yourself in that feeling of love, care, and concern for others, the less you'll fixate on whatever your problems are. It really is, hence the name, an accelerator to life change. It really is, okay? Discipline is accelerator number 3. Here's the exercise. Choose one habit to track for 30 days. Hydration, prayer time, push-up count, what bedtime you want to have. Use a physical habit tracker or an app. You can use an app called Habit Share, but keep that streak alive. Discipline is a muscle. Consistency is your gym, right? So here's an example, perfect example of discipline that accelerated life change for me personally. Okay, so my wife has a pretty large Instagram following. She has for years. She's a runner, and she developed quite a interesting Disney following of folks that love Disneyland, love running, and they followed her along with her journeys. And anyway, so she had a large following. She decided to create a challenge streak called the Streaking with the Cool Kids streak. It basically was a run, walk, jog, 1 mile a day challenge streak. Do it every day in the month of June for 30 days. And I had never done it. She did it every year in June, and she'd open it up for her followers and create prizes and all that kind of stuff for people that completed the streak. Well, for the very first time ever in 2016, June of 2016, I decided to try the streak myself, because at that time I was way overworked. I was dealing with a lot of my own blockers. How do you think I learned all of this stuff? I had to live through it myself too, right? So I decided to do this challenge streak, and all it was walking a mile a day, a dedicated mile a day. Not like you walk because you work. No, not that. It's a conscious, separate 1 mile where you're going to do it with the purpose of continuing this streak, 1 mile a day. Okay. So I started that, did it for 30 days, and it changed my life. The discipline of the habit of doing that then led to me not ever stopping the streak. Here we are in 2025. I'm coming up almost on 10 years of doing a mile a day. It started with 30 days. It started with one habit. It started with one adventure, one example of discipline. Ended up losing 25, almost 30 pounds as a result of that. Walking a mile a day made me want to change what I was eating, then made me want to work out more, and yada, yada, yada. So that exercising the habit of discipline, right? My wife and I now work out, we lift weights. We lift weights usually 5 days out of the week. Doing that when I don't want to, doing it because it's raining, doing it because it's cold, doing it, even because of all of those things. The habit of doing that every day creates that discipline. And the more discipline you have, the more you realize you can really change your life. So, discipline is a tremendous accelerator for life change, okay? Next one is integrity. You got to be an integrous person in order for you to live the full life that you want to live. So pick one area of your life where you're out of alignment. Maybe it's your diet. Maybe it's a vice you have. Maybe it's drinking or smoking or vaping or whatever. Maybe it's money, or maybe it's, over-promising, under-delivering, But make a macro shift, like actually doing what you said you'd do. Integrity isn't about perfection. It's about being trustworthy with yourself. Stated differently, integrity is a muscle that you develop as you exercise it, right? Very similar to discipline, integrity is one of those things that once you start to live more integrous with your life, it affects other areas of your life beyond just that, okay? So if you're not an integrous person, if you can't be trusted, or if you overpromise and then underdeliver, or if you don't keep your word, what ends up happening is it bleeds into other areas of your life. Okay? People stop wanting to invite you things because you say you're going to come and then you don't. People want to stop doing things with you because you say one thing and then do something different. When your word doesn't matter anymore because people don't believe it, it's hard to live your best life. Right? So integrity, acting in integrity, moving toward more integrity, developing integrity. That's an accelerator for life change. That's one of the reasons why it's an important accelerator that we're talking about today. All right. Passion, accelerator number 5. Are you passionate about anything? What are you passionate about in your life? If you key in on passion, okay? So exercise would be ask yourself, what made the 12-year-old me lose track of time when I was a kid? Okay? What provides me the most joy that I do in my life or that I have done in my life in the last 5 years? Okay? What provides me joy? When do I experience elation? I'm elated. When does that occur? And what you want to do is you want to carve out about 30 minutes in the week to do that. Maybe it's painting something. Maybe it's being an artist. Maybe it's artistry. Maybe it's singing. Maybe it's shooting guns. Maybe it's playing with your kids. Maybe it's hanging out with a friend. Maybe it's being out on the water on a boat. Maybe it's skiing somewhere. Whatever it is, whatever that little person inside you, that person that you lost track of, that person that used to experience. See, when we were kids, we don't have to worry about joy or passion, or we just live our life. We're happy, right? So what did you do, or what can you do that gives you a great sense of passion? For me personally, one of the things I love doing is radio, what I'm doing right now. I love talking. I love the cathartic process of communication. I love trying to convey concepts. I love helping people. Part of the reason I'm doing this is I'm a mentor. I'm a coach. I help people change their lives. I've seen people rise and become better versions of themselves through work I've done with them. Now, I'm just a conduit, I'm just a vehicle, but what's really amazing about that is to hear somebody say, I'm living a better life after having met you and gone through this process than I was living before. There's nothing that can describe the feeling that you get when somebody says something like that to you. That gives me passion. It motivates me to get on these airwaves and go, hey, you, text Greybeard to 84503 and I can help you. Text Greybeard to 84503, and I'll give you the special report on blockers and accelerators so maybe you can start the process of changing your life if you so wish, right? This is something that I'm passionate about. It's a form of artistry for me. It's something that's alluring to me, and it's something I'm going to continue to do in many different forms, hence the reason why I'm physically speaking with you right now during this radio show, right? So let's talk about number 6. Accelerator number 6, humility. Humility, okay? Being humble is important. Being grateful, being humble, having humility, ask for feedback. So one of the first things that I do when working with a new client is I'll ask them to query their friends and family. I'll ask them to query their friends and family about their strengths and weaknesses. See, a lot of times we just do life with people. We don't get into those really kind of hard-charging, deep impact kind of conversations. And so one of the first exercises that helps me get to know a new client that's wanting life change, somebody I'm mentoring, somebody I'm coaching, is I'll ask them to ask their friend circle and family circle for a list of their top 5 strengths and their top 5 weaknesses. What am I strongest at? What am I weakest at? And for some people, this is the first time that they've ever had this type of feedback from people that know them. The reason I'm getting it is because, all of us have faces, facades, masks that we wear. And this, for me, is a faster way to really get to the meat of who I'm dealing with and what they're struggling with, because there's nobody that knows that better than the people that love and care about you and spend the most time with you. Because, as a new potential, client of mine, I'm just getting to know somebody. This takes me much deeper, much more quickly into understanding who they are, because we're getting perspectives from their spouse, getting perspectives from their kids, getting perspectives from coworkers or friends or whoever they decide to ask. But I want 3 to 5 different perspectives on what this person's strengths and weaknesses are. So when you're trying to be humble, or if you're living in humility, you want to ask for feedback. Ask your spouse, ask your boss, ask your kids, ask a mentor. Say, what's one thing I could do better that you think I could do better? Okay. Then listen without defending. Growth requires humility, like muscles require resistance. Growth requires humility because you've got to recognize where you're weakest. You've got to recognize what you need to do to get better in your life, and you got to exhibit that humility. You got to be open for that feedback, right? The last accelerator that I'll talk about today for life change, and accelerators are rapid things that you can focus on that create life change the most quickly for you. And it's the concept of wisdom, okay? Being wise, right? So here's an exercise. Read one chapter of a book from someone who's lived the life that you want to live. Are there examples of people living the best life? Can you find a book? Can you find an article on what they said about it? Like all over TikTok and social media, I see these accounts. Hey, you're driving a $3 million car. What advice do you have to give to somebody? How did you achieve success? How did you make your money? There's those types of things out there. And what they're trying to do is elicit wisdom from somebody that's traveled the path where you want to go, right? Wisdom isn't just knowledge. It's reflection turned into understanding and direction. That's really what it is. And like, for example, like the reason I call myself Greybeard. And so the highest and best version of Sean Davis is Greybeard. Greybeard has all of Sean's strengths, but none of Sean's weaknesses. And you have to understand what your strengths and weaknesses are to be able to refine that. And so the exercise of having an avatar, that's what we're talking about here, an avatar for yourself. For me, it's Greybeard. Greybeard is the highest, best version of myself. And if you have an avatar of yourself, if you name that avatar, if you can say, listen, this particular person, whoever it is, it's my avatar, I'm going to name them this person, for me, Greybeard. This Greybeard has all of Sean's strengths, none of his weaknesses. And so if I step into that, if I'm feeling fear, I'll sometimes go, well, Greybeard doesn't feel fear. He's not going to be afraid. So I'm going to live that. If I can live Greybeard for 5 minutes, I can live Greybeard for 50 minutes. I can live him for 5 hours. I can live him for 50 days, right? So the more you step into understanding what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, the more you can start to address the weaknesses by focusing more on your strengths or bringing along people that can help you to address your weaknesses, right? And that's a recipe for life change. Being wise, reflecting, taking action, consider your prior mistakes, consider your prior successes, what worked well, what didn't work well. Are there any patterns? This is all part of the work that I do to help people accelerate life change, right? So hopefully that's making sense to you here. So here's what I'll do, kind of in summary. If you're out there in radio land and desirous of living differently, living better, becoming a better version of yourself, okay? The information I shared about blockers and accelerators should be really, really beneficial to you. It's a place to start. It's a place to begin. And so again, if you reach out, you don't have to work with me. This isn't, if you want to connect, if you'd like to talk, if you want to understand what I do and how I do it and explore that, I'd be happy to do that. But more importantly, I want to get this information out to folks, okay? If you feel stuck and you're living a life that feels like Groundhog's Day and you feel like it's the same day over and over again, that you've been robbed of creative inspiration, that your hope bucket is less full than it's ever been, then I think that I can help with this information. So blockers and accelerators, the quickest path to life change. There's 7 blockers. Let me summarize those again. Fear, guilt, anger, self-sabotage, laziness, envy, lack of focus. Those are the areas where most people feel the most stuck in life. Now, blockers can be addressed. You can eliminate blockers by being conscious and knowledgeable about what they are, and then focusing on the other side, which is accelerators. Here's the accelerators that accelerate positive life change for you: gratitude, love, discipline, integrity, passion, humility, wisdom. Those accelerate positive life change in your life when you can fixate on those. And I've got a summary here, blockers and accelerators, everything you need to know now. If you text Greybeard, Greybeard, to 84503, I'll make them available to you. Just share your email with me. I'll send them out. If you want to chat, we can chat. Want to talk, if you'd like to explore mentoring or coaching with me, I'd be happy to do that. But this isn't about that. This is about getting this information out to those that can benefit from it, that would value it, that understand that this is where change can begin. And this is a quest of mine. Specifically, I've presently worked with about 24 men. And I'm not exclusive to working with men, but I do understand the dynamic of what a lot of men are feeling, because I am one, right? And I think in today's society, I think that a lot of men are feeling less than today for a myriad of different reasons. And so if that's you, if you're feeling stuck, I think I can help. So here again, if you want to text this number, we have a short code number. It's a short digit, not my cell phone number, but just a short number, 84503. If you text 84503 and text my name, Greybeard, to that number, I'll make these accelerators and blockers available for you, both. And it's in a special report that I'll send out to you. And if you'd like to connect with me individually, I'd be happy to help. So this is the Greybeard Show. Thank you for listening. I'll be back here same time, same place next week to talk more. Have a great week. Greybeard out. This is the Greybeard Show.
The Greybeard Show. Learn.
Build.
Grow.